Welcome to this special edition of the Speaking of Steel podcast, in which we're going to discuss Donald Trump's decision to levy 25% tariffs on global steel and aluminium imports into the US. I'm joined by US-based steel market analyst Laura Hodges. Hi, Laura. How are you doing?
Good morning.
And John Carruthers-Green, who's in the MEPS office in the UK. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm very good, thank you.
Great stuff. This is sort of breaking news, as you can tell, with the different time zones that we're dealing with. But we really wanted to bring viewers a flavour of what was happening with these steel and aluminium tariffs in the US and try and understand what some of those implications were. So I'll come to you first, Laura, if that's okay. Can you just tell us exactly sort of what was announced and when we first heard about this new announcement?
Certainly. I mean, it has been almost a whirlwind tour of tariffs over the last couple of days here. On Sunday, President Trump announced on his way to the Super Bowl that we were going to implement 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel, with more to come on Monday. So we did get that fairly late in the day yesterday. And just a little bit of time to read the executive order, which I think came out around midnight last night. So from what we understand thus far is that the U.S. will be implementing a 25% tariff on all products across pretty much all countries. It's basically a reset to the Section 232 tariffs that he implemented during his first term in 2018. So what does this mean? It effectively is eliminating exceptions, exemptions, exclusions, and all countries will be subject to a 25% tariff on both steel and aluminum. Clearly, we're going to focus more on the steel side here today, but it is worth noting that the original 232 tariffs were 10% tariff on aluminum, and now both metals will be receiving a 25% tariff. I guess the other main thing to note is that I'll say two more things, and then we'll kick it off to maybe some implications here. But they are scheduled to go into effect at midnight on March 12th. It's a little different than the rumors that were floating around yesterday, which I think most people were saying March 4th, but it is March 12th, so about a month from now. And not only will this include steel, it will include fabrications, so steel fabrications. So there's a little less information on exactly what fabrications will be included on that. We'll have to wait and see what the final register comes out, as well as an update on Chapter 99 of the HS coding system. But for the most part, I think I've covered most of the main areas. I guess the only other thing I would go over is the why. There's some information. All of this is posted out on the White House website, but there is the reason as to why he is changing or resetting the 232 Section 232 tariffs was the fact that the usefulness and effectiveness really of these tariffs has eroded over the past 6 years, in that there has been more and more, circumvention, particularly from, he quoted China and Russia as really circumventing some of these tariffs and going through other countries. And so it's just to cut any type of potential advantage by going through one country or the other, and including all countries at this point in that 25% tariffs.
So I think, John, in particular, in reference to sort of tariffs that we've seen implemented previously in the EU, for example, the term leveling the playing field is often used. That is kind of the same feel here, but with real consequences. 25% is a huge tariff, isn't it?
So with regards to the exceptions to these tariffs, the countries can really sort of broadly be cut into three different categories. First of all, there'll be those countries where there is no change after this announcement. So these will be the countries like China, Vietnam, who were where the Section 232 tariffs were applied entirely. So for those, there'll be no change. Then there'll be other countries such as the UK, the European Union, Argentina, Brazil, and so on. There'll be these countries who were able to negotiate either some kind of quota or a tariff rate quota for their imports into the US. They'll be affected by this. And then finally, there's Canada and Mexico. And originally within the 232 scheme, they were exempted entirely. Of course, the USMCA was something that was supposed to take effect instead. Whereas now we see these guys included on this list of countries. So they'll go from nothing to this 25% tariff when we hit the 12th of March.
Can you tell us a bit about the implications, perhaps, Laura, of that? I mean, these sanctions that we might see on steel from Canada and Mexico coming on the back of the recent negotiations of threats of tariffs earlier.
Right.
Yeah, what are going to be the implications of that?
Sure. I mean, it is a great question. And that one I'm definitely prepared for, because we just looked at this about a week ago before they were paused for 30 days. Of course, it's a little bit different. That was 25% tariffs in Mexico and Canada across all products. Here we're talking about steel and fabricated steel. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective, first of all, these two countries do make up about a third of all imports coming into the United States. So it is a significant development going from 0 to 25%. I would say that in terms of the price implications, which of course here at MEPS we focus on, and we do just in general our outlook over the next 6 months is one of increasing prices. From and right even before the implementation, the formal implementation of tariffs, we had expected looking at flat primarily here, about a 25% increase in prices from their January levels through the summer. We had estimated last week when we were looking at this that expect at least another 10 to 15% increase in prices, particularly on the flat side, due to a 25% tariff on these products. So, there are near-term effects and longer-term effects that we could certainly get into, but, certainly in the near-term effect, you are going to see price increases. And really, if you're looking at futures markets or even Nucor yesterday, had come out with, over the last 3 weeks, they've increased their CSP. Did I say that right? CSP price on hot roll by $40 a short ton. So we're already starting to see some price increases. The futures markets for HRC are, last time I checked, already up, $60 for March contracts. So you're already starting to see price increases, and this will certainly be the biggest near-term effect for domestic prices here in the U.S.
Yeah, of course. We'd previously heard talk of retaliatory measures from Mexico and Canada when there was previously mention of tariffs against them. Does this new announcement give rise to those sorts of negotiations again, do you think?
I assume yes. I don't know how much people, as particularly those two countries, almost doing a sigh of relief last week, have prepared for, these tariffs to be announced just a week later. So I think we'll have to stay tuned for more information on that one. But you would assume that, most countries have mentioned as the primary response, retaliatory tariffs. And it should be noted, I mean, we do export quite a bit across the border as well. So this not as much. Mexico, I think, kind of evens out a bit in terms of exports and imports. Canada, I need to look into that, but effectively it would mean a difference on our side as well. There is, both ways going across our southern and northern border in terms of steel products. So you would imagine that one of the clearest responses is going to be a retaliatory tariff.
And I think we also looked in quite close analysis at MEPS into the relationship with the automotive sector as well in Mexico at the time. The automotive and construction supply chains are quite closely aligned, aren't they? Those are things that be of real concern.
Especially with the addition of the fabrications. That's something that I think we do really need to look into, especially when the full list is sort of enumerated in the Federal Register in Chapter 99. So we need to take a look at that, because not only steel, but keep in mind how many fabrications are really incorporated into a car. I would imagine that would be a very significant effect on car manufacturing here in the United States, and of course prices, just due to the crossing so many times on this integrated supply chain for auto production here in North America. So that is something that we certainly need to look at. There were a lot of stories out there when it was all products, and really the auto industry being one of the worst hit industries with the implementation of the 25% tariffs last week for both Mexico and Canada, and just the devastating effects it might have in the near term on the auto industry. But certainly with steel and fabrications, it'll be impacted as well.
So I think in Europe it's a little different over here. The intention by the European Commission is to apply tariffs on a bit more of a targeted manner. So not necessarily on any kind of iron and steel products that are coming from the US, but really to try and target the tariffs on products that will hurt American producers. Not necessarily, like I say, of iron and steel, but of other things you traditionally associate with them. And the other thing that they've had a lot more time to plan and prepare these. So our expectation when they do finally announce them is that these tariffs are going to be targeted to really, really hurt American producers.
So we're talking about other products, consumer products. We've already heard about the effect on consumers.
Yeah.
I think Harley Davidson motorbikes, bourbon, things like that, Laura, they're the key things.
Right.
Stock up
and I will say, though, that the term retaliatory tariffs takes a different form in another way, because Trump there are more tariffs potentially to come today and tomorrow, because he has mentioned, I was referring to potential retaliatory tariffs regarding these initial 25% steel and aluminum tariffs and the reaction by Mexico and Canada. But I should note that Trump has also said what's forthcoming this week is his plans for retaliatory tariffs from the U.S. regarding other products where we are tariffed in other countries. So he wants to do an equalization of those tariffs, almost, in that if the EU is tariffing our cars 10%, that we will apply the same 10% coming in. So there is definitely more announcements to come this week on those types of tariffs as well. So again, I feel like a broken record already, but stay tuned for more information on that as well, and the implications for the steel market.
And I think the other big change that we're going to see now with the 232 tariffs isn't just these exceptions which were set on a country-by-country basis, but there was another workaround to paying the 25%. And that was the exclusion process. This was where US importers were able to say that there's a demand for a particular product coming from outside of the country that wasn't being satisfied by producers in the US. So they were able to say, we need this material. And by doing so, it would bypass the tariffs. That process is going. So the list, I think it was running to the millions of tons of steel products that were on this list, will immediately, as of March 12th, start picking up these tariffs. One of the directives that they included there was that no new exclusions would be allowed, and the current exclusions would be cancelled as soon as some materials imported from that list. So essentially they're completely gone now.
So I guess this is going to tighten supply considerably, Laura. I mean, we've spoken previously about the inflation risk attached to tariffs, and I guess in the steel sector, this could be a real issue.
It will be. I mean, especially for more of your niche products or smaller products. I mean, on the flat roll side, we talked about this a bit. We've had a lot more capacity come online over the last year, and certainly more to come this year and next. So for many of your more common grades, I would imagine that there is excess supply here in the United States. AISI just came out with their weekly production figures yesterday, and we're about 75% capacity. But that capacity figure itself is increasing, week by week with the opening of the Big River Steel project, just in the fourth quarter of last year. So, there are some products that I think will be okay on, but there are certainly others that we may not. I mean, we've had some mill closures just recently on wire rod. We've had some mill closures on, 10 plate over the last couple of years. We have had some mill closures that for some of these smaller product bases that I do think would be impacted quite a bit.
And I think it's key that the exclusions are ones where people in the US have come and said that there isn't enough supply. So
Right.
For these niche products, there is going to be a particularly acute shortage, and certainly in the short term.
And John, I guess you've been addressing sort of things from the EU side. We've already seen some statements from the European Commission and also from the European Steel Association, Eurofer. They sort of acknowledge the dire situation in the European steel market as it stands. Just how much of a blow is this going to be to the European steel industry if those tariffs are ultimately applied?
It's going to be tricky. Around about just shy of 4 million tons of steel products are being exported from the EU into the US, and that's going to have to find a home. Like you say, they're struggling with a lack of demand at the moment in Europe, and to add another 4 million tons on top of that is really going to put a lid on any potential price rises that producers were pushing for. Essentially, the US is the second largest market for EU exports, and to lose that's going to be a big problem.
So I guess I just wanted to sum things up because we were trying to give people a bit of a snapshot of where we were at the moment. Obviously, we'll keep covering this through MEPS research and future publications and podcasts. But just to sum things up, I just wanted to sort of put to you, Laura, the potential that not all these tariffs might be applied. We were here before with Canada and Mexico, and the jury's still out on that. How likely is it that on March 12, every country in the world is going to be hit with these 25% tariffs?
I mean, that is the $1 million question, of course, quite literally. So, this is obviously an industry that is near and dear to President Trump's heart. I think it goes without saying that he wants to make the steel industry strong again. And I think that there's certainly room, where logic makes sense with these exclusions and everything else, but it's hard to say. I could see them, people preparing over the next month, and it's hard to negotiate with every single country in the world within 4-week time periods. So I would say we should prepare for these to go into effect, to be honest with you. I don't know, John, if you might have a different take on that, but I would prepare for the worst on this one.
Yeah,
it's high stakes in the EU, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I've got to agree with a lot of that, really. Where we got to now took a long time and a lot of negotiation. For this to then happen within the next 4 weeks or whatever it is, I think that's a very tall order. Like Laura says, there's lots of people that they would have to go and negotiate with and have to come to some kind of deal with. And I really think that's quite a quite a challenge. So even for the short term, I see it's quite likely that these tariffs will be applied. And then the other side of this is the uncertainty. How long will they be there for? That in itself is going to impact decisions.
Well, I think probably we have to end this podcast in the same way that we've ended previous podcasts that mentioned Donald Trump, in the sense that watch this space, because we certainly will be looking into it quite closely and trying to keep tabs as best we can. Laura, John, thanks ever so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and it's fascinating. We'll keep watching how this folds out. Thanks ever so much, guys.
Thank you.